Hello and welcome to Anatomy Physiology lesson 4.06 over hair and nails or fingernails. We're going to do two different sheets. So the first sheet we're going to talk about is hair. Let's start off with some fun facts. You have about 125,000 hairs on your head and you lose about 100 hairs a day. In fact, when I got ready to make this video, I looked down and I literally had a hair lying on this piece of paper. The lifespan of a single hair is about 5 years. Black is the most common color. And ladies, by the time we're age 65, we will have spent 7 months of our life styling, drying, washing, taking care of our hair. So if you total up all the time we spend each day, that's quite some time. Well, let's learn a little bit more about the hair. And we're going to start with a single strand. This is in pink. I'm going to kind of highlight this. And I'm going to do the same thing on the sheet next to me. Oops, yeah, a little off center there. So over here, you're looking at this. So what we're looking at there is the hair follicle. Call that the follicle, Follicle, or the hair follicle. And this is where the scalp indents. And so if we're looking at somebody's scalp, you'd see a follicle coming down if you did a cross section. Now, these are three different follicles, and we're going to talk about how the shape affects the texture of the hair. But the follicle is part of the scalp. And it provides the area where the hair can grow. The hair is attached about 2/3 of the way up the follicle, and then we reach a point where the hair is free. So where the hair, and this hair would continue up, so we're just showing the very base of the hair. This is the scalp. This portion is called the hair shaft. And the part that extends from, if you run your fingers through your hair, obviously that's the part you feel. Whoops. On your head. This is not attached to any kind of connective tissue. It is freestanding in the hair follicle, and it's made of keratin. So hair is made of keratin, just like the top of our epidermis. We're going to find out our nails are made of the same thing. So are horses' hooves. So are a horses' manes. And it's beneficial because keratin is waterproof. In a sense, I mean, we can think of the fact that our hair gets wet, and that's true, but it's also tough. So it's waterproof and it's tough, whether it's our skin, whether it's our nails. The rest of the hair that extends down and through here then is part of a complex. But before we do that, let's add a few other side notes here. So we have a sebaceous gland. And we're going to talk about a couple of the issues that arise from the sebum that's produced by the sebaceous gland, but we're going to hang on to that for a bit. I want to finish the anatomy of the hair first. Over here on the other side, we would have, it's not shown, but we would have that erector pili muscle. So we're going to draw that in. ARRECTORPILI muscle. And we talked extensively at the intro for about what this erector pili muscle can do for us. It stands the hair on end. It helps try to preserve body heat. Helps try to make us look scary if we get frightened. The only parts of this structure that I want to highlight, down here I have a bulb, Kind of comes around like this. And in the middle of the bulb, I have what's called the matrix zone. So it's a little difficult to read. This says matrix zone of the bulb. Whoops, I already used this color. Oh well. I'll just pick a lighter green. And this is where mitosis takes place. Just like in the epidermis, where that bottom layer of the epidermis, as the mitosis takes place at the bottom, it pushes the rest of the cells up. So your hair actually grows from bottom and it pushes up this way. That's why by the time we get to the top, just like the stratum corneum, this is dead. You don't have any nerve endings, but the mitosis is taking place down here. Now this diagram's a little bit confusing. You see we've got the dermis, and then we have the cuticle, cortex, and the medulla. This dermis, so this portion in between, it's really difficult to see on a black and white. If you come in about 3 or 4 rings, you do a circle around this dark purple here. This is the actual hair. So inside the circle is the hair. The rest of this is the parts of the follicle that we're not going to learn. But the follicle has different portions to it. What I think is interesting to note is if we take a hair, it has 3 portions, and I'm going to kind of recolor code this. So in the middle, I've got a light blue. It's pretty small. And then I have this dotted pink structure. And then on the outside, I have a dark purple. So, I'm sorry, let's see, what's this pointing to? Medulla, cortex, cuticle. Yeah, I'm going to go with the dots. This, everywhere it's blue is part of the same thing. Can't make up my mind. Okay, I'm changing my mind. Let's do a dark purple ring around the edge. And then in the middle, I'll just do line stripes. So we've got the stripes. We've got this, and we've got the purple. And the reason I want to talk about this is some of you may go on to become hairstylists. So if you do, you have to know an awful lot about the structure of each individual hair. The middle is called the medulla. And this is where a lot of the pigment is contained. And the pigment is the same as the pigment for the skin. So if we have eumelanin, that's going to be black and brown. And that's the only melanin we talked about. There's actually another melanin that's called melanin that's more of a red. We've got carotenes. Blonde hair is usually just a lack of pigment. There's not really a blonde color. It just means you don't have a lot of pigment. Quite often, people who have blonde hair are also fair-skinned. The striped middle portion is called the cortex. And this outer ring is called the cuticle. And the cuticle is a lot like the corneum, where it's just all 100% keratinocytes that are overlapping. They have that scale-like consistency. But if you've ever gotten your hair colored or you've gotten a perm, when stylists will talk about opening up the cuticle, in order to get the chemicals into the hair shaft, you have to get that cuticle loosened and opened. And so a lot of times they'll put on an agent to do that, to get that cuticle, like they say, opened. And that's true. It's actually a thing. All right, so we've got the follicle, sebaceous gland, erector pili. We've got the bulb, we've got the matrix zone of the bulb, and then we have the 3 areas in a cross-sectioned hair. So this is a cross-section. All right, so let's go back to this sebaceous gland. What's the deal with that? When our hormones are at a high level, it tends to increase our sebum production. And when we're pumping out lots of sebum, if you mix that with a tendency for skin to have, or scalp, in this case, we're talking about not the scalp, but we're talking about as it affects the rest of the skin. So this would be more the main body epidermis. this can become plugged. And when this becomes plugged, some bad things can happen. So if we plug a pore with sebum, we get what's called a comb dome. You guys know comb domes as otherwise known as whiteheads. As time goes on, they can actually discolor because they oxidize and they become black. So blackheads and whiteheads are actually the same thing. A blackhead's just a whitehead that's hung around for a long time. The other problem we can get though is if this gets plugged and we get bacteria trapped in here, they love places that are dark and warm, and it's perfect bacteria breeding ground. You can actually get a bacterial infection. We call this a pustule. You guys would call it a zit or acne. But it is an infected or an infection pore. So what happens is those bacteria get trapped. Well, your immune system starts to attack them, and the pus that you see is actually parts of dead bacteria and dead tissue that build up. And it can be a real problem, especially when you're in your teens to early 20s, because hormones really are, going crazy. A lot of things you can do, a lot of treatments. And the sad thing is, if you get through puberty and you don't have acne, ladies especially, you might think you beat the trap. Turns out when you hit your 40s and your body starts to go through its second change early on, you can get adult onset acne, especially in the chin area. I'm just coming out of that. That was not much fun. So it can really happen at any point in life. Let's see, let's talk about hair shape. So over here, I have 3 different shaped follicles. I have a follicle that's straight, I have a follicle that's slightly bent, and I have a follicle that's got this really strong C-shaped. This is what determines straight hair, wavy hair, curly hair. If your hair is super curly, your hair follicle is shaped like this, and when the hair grows, it actually grows, it coils as it grows. You have stick straight hair, it grows up and then it whoop, flops over. But if you have wavy hair, it's kind of halfway in between. And then your hair shafts, so these are the hair shafts, look like this. So the hair shaft is either round, it's a crescent shaped, or it's an oval. We have some disorders associated. Before we talk about disorders, let's talk about the categories of hair. If you've ever looked at your little niece or nephew, you'll notice their hair and your hair look very different. So in children, we have 2 types of hair. There's actually 3. There's another one called lanugo we're not going to discuss. If you've ever reached down and kind of rubbed your nephew or your niece's, your 2-year-old nephew or niece's hair, it's really soft, it's really fine, and that's called vellus hair. So it's soft, fine, and it's often in children. Terminal hair is coarse, C-O-A-R-S-E. It's thick, and it's in adults. So it changes. When we hit puberty and the hormones start pumping, most of our hair changes from vellus hair to terminal hair. Not the hair on your arms and arms and like abdomen. That remains vellus, but everything else pretty much, a lot of it changes to terminal. Well, we can have a condition called alopecia. I'll have to write it down here. Alopecia is just the general name for hair loss. So alopecia just means hair loss. And there's lots of different ways we can have hair loss. We could have a male pattern baldness. We could have females can actually have pattern baldness. It's not as common because it's a sex-linked trait. We could have an autoimmune disease that attacks our hair. But often what happens with alopecia, so for example, in male pattern baldness, alopecia, the hair reverts back. It goes from terminal back to vellus. And if you look at a pore on somebody's head that has male pattern baldness, you'll see that they have actually very, very small, tiny, fine hairs that grow. But to us, it looks like they don't because they don't really show up. It's supposed to be a P, not a B. Let me fix this. All right, I'm going to pause the video while I'm going to swap out my hair slide for my nail slide. All right, I have now put up my page from the notepad, page 9 for nails. The term for nails is onycho, O-N-Y-C-H-O, and that means nail. Again, they're made of keratin. And we have a superior view and we have a lateral view, mid-sagittal section. So we've got a mid-sag section. This is lateral. And I have a view that's superior. Just like the hair in the epidermis, what happens is we have a matrix at this end, in this area, that the nail grows from. And as it grows out. And if you've ever pinched your nail or hit your nail and it has fallen off, you know that when it regrows, it kind of starts to slide out this way, and it slowly over time begins to move forward. We have folds all around. So we have a fold underneath to protect the skin underneath, because if we got bacteria and dirt underneath this nail bed, so this portion is called the nail bed. Actually, I think it's called the plate. Boy, I'm going to have to look that one up. And then underneath is the bed. I've got to fact check that. Remind me. We have a fold here, and we have a fold here that keeps liquid and dirt out. This fold is called the hyponychium, and it's spelled Hyponychium. Hyponychium, and hypo we know means below the nail, so that makes sense. Here, and I'm going to color it in, let's do purple. So here and here, I have the eponychium. Eponychium. And you probably call this your cuticle. So if you go and you get a manicure, you tell the nail tech, "I'll make sure you push back my cuticles." I realize I don't have everything on the screen. Slide this down a little bit. Okay. We call the sides of the fingernail here and here lateral folds. And then finally, we have this area that's kind of exposed. We call it, like, they look like the little half moons. Well, the Latin for moon is luno. So this area here where we have growth coming up is called the lunula. Lunula. And together, the lateral folds, eponychium, hyponychium, seal it. We have growth from the matrix. It looks different here at the lunula because I believe it's thicker and then it thins out as it grows. But everything else that we knew about growth and keratin for epidermis and for hair is true here as well. We have, so let's see, growth occurs, the matrix pushes the nail forward. So let's talk about a couple of disorders. Let's talk about onychophagia. and perionychium. Well, you know, these both have to do with nail, right? I believe we've had Fago. I think it was on the list for this week. But if we haven't, Fago is eat. If you have a Nycophagia, you bite your nails. If you have a Perionychium, you have a hangnail. You have a piece of skin over here on the side. So this is a hangnail. This is a good example of how these really kind of daunting Latin terms. I mean, that looks like a scary word, Nycophagia and Perionychium. Those look downright daunting. But if you understand the terms, the medical terms, all of a sudden these big scary words really aren't that scary. All right, that is all that we have on hair and nails. Thanks for watching. Let's do a quick, what are our takeaways? So, grab my first sheet. For the hair, you need to know the anatomy of the hair, including the cross section, what makes hair wavy, and then disorders regarding the sebaceous glands and alopecia. For the nail, you need to know the anatomy. We've got the plate bed, the folds, all of that, and then we have a couple of disorders. All right, thanks for watching and have a good day.